I still remember how the invitation arrived. A crisp white envelope with gold lettering, my mother's style for important family gatherings. Inside was an invitation to my cousin Amber's engagement dinner at La Maison, the most expensive restaurant in town. I traced my fingers over the embossed letters, feeling a mix of surprise and cautious hope. My relationship with my mother had always been complicated. Ever since my father left when I was 12, she'd kept me at arm's length, as if I reminded her too much of him. My brother Michael, on the other hand, had always been her golden child, the one who looked like her, who shared her interests, who never disappointed her. I hadn't seen most of my family in almost a year, not since last Christmas when my mother had made a point of criticizing my career choice in front of everyone. A wedding planner? Really, Emma? That's hardly a stable profession. The memory still stung, but this invitation felt like an olive branch. Maybe things could be different this time. I spent weeks preparing for the dinner. I found a dress that was elegant, but not flashy. Navy blue with a modest neckline. I even scheduled an appointment to get my hair done, something I rarely splurged on. And I spent hours searching for the perfect engagement gift for Amber, finally settling on a custom photo album filled with pictures of her and her fiancé James from childhood until now. I'd contacted their friends and family secretly, gathering photos and memories. It was personal, thoughtful, the kind of gift that showed real care. The night of the dinner, I arrived at La Maison 15 minutes early. The restaurant was everything you'd expect from a place where entrees start at $50. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, waiters in black ties. I clutched my purse in one hand and Amber's carefully wrapped gift in the other as I approached the hostess. "I'm here for the Hamilton engagement dinner," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She checked her list. "Yes, in the private room in the back. Follow me." Walking through the restaurant, I rehearsed casual greetings in my head. It had been so long since I'd seen everyone. Would Aunt Patricia still be upset about the family beach house dispute? Would Uncle Robert remember that I'd missed his birthday party because of a client emergency? The hostess led me to a set of double doors and pushed them open. Inside was a beautiful room with a long table set for about 20 people. The centerpieces were arrangements of white roses and baby's breath, simple but elegant. Only a few guests had arrived so far. Amber and James weren't there yet, but my mother was. She stood near the head of the table, arranging place cards with my Aunt Patricia. She wore a silver dress that complemented her ash blonde hair, which was pulled back in her signature chignon. She looked up when I entered, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw surprise in her eyes, quickly masked. "Emma," she said, her tone neutral. "You're early." I smiled, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach. "Hi, Mom. The place looks beautiful." She nodded slightly. Patricia and I were just finishing the seating arrangement. I glanced at the table, wondering where I would be seated. Probably near the end, far from the important family members. That was usually how it went. "I brought something for Amber and James," I said, holding up the wrapped package. "Where should I put it?" Mom gestured to a small table in the corner already piled with gifts. "Over there is fine." I placed my gift on the table, adjusting it so the handwritten card was visible. When I turned back, more guests had arrived, including my brother Michael and his wife Sophia. They were greeted warmly by my mother, who embraced Sophia like a daughter. I watched from a distance, feeling the familiar ache of being the outsider. Over the next 30 minutes, the room filled with family and close friends. I made small talk with a few cousins, exchanged pleasantries with Uncle Robert, who thankfully didn't mention his birthday, and admired James's mother's new haircut. But throughout it all, I felt like I was performing in a play where everyone else had rehearsed together, and I was the only one who hadn't seen the script. Amber and James finally arrived to cheers and applause. Amber looked radiant in a champagne-colored dress, her face flushed with happiness. I waited my turn to congratulate them, watching as each family member embraced them, offered congratulations, made jokes about married life. When it was finally my turn, I gave Amber a genuine hug. "I'm so happy for you," I said. "James is lucky to have you." Amber smiled, and I was reminded of when we were kids, building sandcastles together at the beach. "Thanks for coming, Emma. It means a lot." And just as everyone was beginning to find their seats, a waiter appeared with champagne flutes on a tray. My mother clinked a spoon against her glass. "Before we sit down, I'd like to propose a toast to Amber and James. May your life together be filled with the joy you both deserve." Everyone raised their glasses. I took a sip of champagne, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. Maybe this evening would be all right after all. And then came the words that would change everything. "Now," my mother continued, "let's all take our seats. The table in the center is for immediate family only." Her eyes swept across the room but didn't land on me. "Everyone else, you'll find your names at the smaller tables around the perimeter." I froze, champagne flute halfway to my lips. Immediate family? I looked at the main table. There were place cards for my mother, my brother Michael and his wife, Amber's parents, her brother, James and his parents, and even my Aunt Patricia and Uncle Robert. But not for me. Not for me. Her daughter. For a moment, I thought there must be a mistake. But as people began to move toward their assigned seats, I saw my name card on one of the smaller tables near the back of the room, sandwiched between a distant cousin I barely knew and one of James's colleagues from work. The message couldn't have been clearer. I wasn't considered immediate family, at least not by her. I stood there, utterly still, as the realization washed over me. Around me, conversations continued, glasses clinked, laughter echoed. But I felt like I was underwater, everything muffled and distant. My mother was arranging something on the main table, her back to me. I walked over to her, my legs moving on autopilot. "Mom," I said quietly, not wanting to create a scene. "There must be a mistake with the seating." She turned, her expression perfectly composed. "What do you mean?" "You said the main table is for immediate family," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. "I'm your daughter." She glanced around quickly, as if checking who might overhear. "Emma, don't make this difficult. We have a limited number of seats at the main table, and I had to prioritize." "Prioritize?" I repeated. "Over your own daughter?" Her jaw tightened. "This table's for immediate family only," she said, without looking at me, her voice low but firm. "Your assigned seat is over there." Something inside me broke in that moment, and yet, paradoxically, something else hardened. I'd spent years trying to earn her approval, her love, her simple acknowledgement. But in that moment, I saw with perfect clarity that it would never be enough. I would never be enough. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see the imposing, perfect mother I'd been trying to please my whole life. I saw a woman who was so caught up in appearances, in her own narrow definition of family, that she was willing to publicly humiliate her own daughter. "I understand," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Perfectly." I turned away from her and walked directly to the gift table. I picked up my carefully crafted present for Amber and James. For a brief moment, I considered leaving it. It wasn't Amber's fault after all, but something in me couldn't bear to leave behind this piece of myself, this token of genuine care that my own mother couldn't recognize. As I tucked the package under my arm, I caught Amber's eye across the room. She was watching me with a confused expression. I gave her a small smile and a barely perceptible shake of my head. I'd explain later. Right now, I needed to leave before the tears burning behind my eyes fell. I walked out of the private room, through the main restaurant, and into the cool evening air without looking back. Only when I reached my car did I allow myself to cry. brief, angry tears that I quickly wiped away. This wasn't the time for breakdown. This was the time for decisions. In my car, I sat with my hands gripping the steering wheel, though I hadn't started the engine. My phone buzzed with a text from my brother Michael. "Where did you go? Mom says you're making a scene by leaving." I almost laughed. Of course that's what she would say. I didn't respond. Instead, I made a call to someone who had always been there for me when my biological family wasn't. My godmother, Eleanor. She had been my father's best friend since college, and when he left, she had made it her mission to stay in my life, despite my mother's thinly veiled hostility toward her. "Eleanor, it's Emma," I said when she picked up. "Are you busy right now?" "For you? Never," she said, her warm voice instantly comforting. "What's wrong, honey? You sound upset." I explained what had happened, trying to keep my voice steady. Eleanor listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she sighed deeply. "Oh, Emma, I'm so sorry. Your mother has always had a talent for cruelty disguised as practicality. I just don't understand why," I said, voicing the question that had haunted me for years. What did I ever do to make her treat me this way? "Nothing," Eleanor said firmly. "You did nothing wrong. Some people simply can't see beyond their own pain, and your mother has been nursing her grievances since your father left. You look like him. You have his creative spirit, and instead of cherishing those things, she resents them." We talked for almost an hour, my car parked outside the restaurant where my family continued to celebrate without me. And somewhere in that conversation, as Eleanor reminded me of all the things I had accomplished despite my mother's lack of support, a plan began to form in my mind. "Eleanor," I said suddenly, "remember when you told me that you had set aside some money from my father for when I was ready to start my own business? The wedding planning agency you've been talking about for years?" Eleanor said. "Yes, of course. The money is still there, growing nicely. Are you finally ready?" "I think I am," I said, feeling a sense of clarity I hadn't experienced before. "But I need to do something else first." After ending the call with Eleanor, I made another call, this one to James's father, Richard Bennett. As the owner of several successful restaurants in the city, Richard had been a client of the wedding planning firm where I worked. I had coordinated his company's annual gala last year, saving the event after the original planner quit 2 weeks before. Richard had been impressed enough to request me specifically for his daughter-in-law's upcoming wedding. "Emma," he greeted me warmly when he picked up. "Aren't you at the engagement dinner? I was planning to come a bit later. One of my restaurants had a minor crisis." "Actually, I've left," I said. "But that's not why I'm calling. I wanted to talk to you about Amber and James's wedding. I know you've offered to pay for it as a gift to them." "Yes, they're looking at venues next week," Richard said. "I told them money is no object. After all, you only get married once, or at least that's the plan." He chuckled. "What if I told you I could create the wedding of their dreams for half what you were expecting to pay?" I said. "The catch is, I'd need you to keep something secret for now." Richard was intrigued, and by the end of our conversation, he had agreed to my proposal. I would plan Amber and James's wedding personally, using Eleanor's investment to launch my own wedding planning business in the process. Richard would fund the wedding as planned, but no one, especially not my mother, would know I was involved until the day itself. "You're sure about this?" Richard asked. "It seems like a lot of work just to make a point." "It's not just about making a point," I said, finally starting my car. "It's about creating something beautiful for Amber and James, and for myself. Over the next 5 months, I worked harder than I ever had in my life. By day, I continued at my regular job. By night and on weekends, I built my business from the ground up, registering the name Forever Moments Wedding Planning, creating a website, establishing relationships with vendors, and secretly planning Amber and James's wedding. Amber was surprised when Richard suggested they work with a new exclusive planner he had connections with, but she trusted her future father-in-law's judgment. All communication went through Richard, who passed along Amber and James's preferences to me. I created design boards, menu options, and venue suggestions that Richard presented as coming from his mysterious planner friend. My mother, meanwhile, was beside herself with jealousy that she had been sidelined in the planning process. She called Amber multiple times a week, with suggestions that were politely declined. She even tried to convince Richard to let her meet this exclusive planner, but he held firm to our agreement. "Your mother has been insufferable," Amber confided to me during one of our rare phone calls. We had maintained our relationship, though I had been careful not to mention anything about the wedding planning. "She acts like she's the mother of the bride instead of the aunt." I murmured sympathetic noises while inwardly smiling at the irony. If only she knew. As the wedding day approached, I finalized every detail personally. The venue was the Botanical Gardens, with the ceremony in the Rose Pavilion and the reception in the Grand Glass Conservatory. The flowers would be arrangements of garden roses, ranunculus, and delicate ferns. The menu featured locally sourced ingredients prepared by a chef from one of Richard's restaurants. The cake was a 4-tier creation with handmade sugar flowers cascading down one side. 2 nights before the wedding, I received a call from my brother Michael. "Mom is driving everyone crazy," he said without preamble. "She's convinced that the wedding is going to be a disaster because she hasn't been involved in the planning." "That's not my problem," I said, checking off items on my final preparation list as we spoke. "She wants you to talk to Amber, to convince her to let Mom make some last-minute changes." I laughed. "Why would I have any influence? According to Mom, I'm not even immediate family." Michael was quiet for a moment. "That wasn't right, what she did at the engagement dinner. I should have said something." "Yes, you should have," I agreed. "But you didn't, and here we are." "Are you coming to the wedding?" he asked. "I'm invited, aren't I? Amber sent me an invitation." "Yes, but Mom has been saying you'll probably try to ruin it somehow because you're still upset about the dinner." This time my laughter was genuine. "Trust me, Michael. Ruining Amber's wedding is the last thing I want to do." The day of the wedding dawned clear and perfect. I arrived at the Botanical Gardens at 5 a.m., hours before any guests or even the bride would arrive. I personally checked every detail, directed the setup crews, and coordinated with all the vendors. By the time the first shuttle of guests arrived at 2 p.m., everything was flawless. I had arranged for a small room to be available for me to change and prepare once my coordinator duties were temporarily handled by my assistant. I slipped into a simple but elegant emerald green dress, a color I knew my mother disliked, and applied my makeup with care. Then I joined the other guests for the ceremony, deliberately choosing a seat far from where my mother would be. The ceremony was everything I had envisioned for Amber and James. The Rose Pavilion was in full bloom, creating a natural cathedral of fragrant flowers. The string quartet played Canon in D as the bridal party processed, and Amber was radiant in the dress she had chosen from the selection I had curated. I saw my mother in the front row, wearing an overly elaborate hat that threatened to block the view of those behind her. Some things never change. After the ceremony, guests were directed to the conservatory for the reception, while the wedding party took photos. I slipped away briefly to check that the reception setup was perfect. The tables with their delicate centerpieces, the place cards in their calligraphy, the cake displayed on its custom stand. Everything was exactly as I had planned. I returned just as dinner was about to be served. I was seated at a table with some of James's cousins, far from my mother, just as I had arranged. The meal progressed beautifully, with each course arriving precisely on time. The champagne flowed, the band played softly, and the golden hour sunlight filtered through the glass walls of the conservatory, casting everyone in a magical glow. Then it was time for the speeches. James's father Richard stood up first, champagne glass in hand. "When James introduced us to Amber 3 years ago, I knew she was special," he began. smiling at the couple. And when they told us they were engaged, I wanted to give them the perfect wedding as my gift. My mother sat up straighter, clearly expecting to be acknowledged for her contributions. "But I have a confession to make," Richard continued. "I didn't plan this wedding. Neither did my assistant or any of the planners from my restaurants, as some of you may have assumed." A murmur ran through the crowd. Amber and James looked at each other in confusion. Richard raised his glass in my direction. This perfect day was created, down to the smallest detail, by one person. Emma Hamilton, Amber's cousin. All eyes turned to me as I felt a flush rise to my cheeks. Amber's mouth dropped open in astonishment. "Not only that," Richard continued, "but Emma has used this opportunity to launch her own wedding planning business, Forever Moments. And based on what we've all experienced today, I'd say it's going to be a tremendous success." There was a moment of stunned silence, and then the room erupted in applause. Amber rose from her seat and rushed over to embrace me, tears in her eyes. "You did all this?" she whispered. "It's perfect, Emma. Absolutely perfect." Over Amber's shoulder, I could see my mother. Her face had gone pale, her expression frozen in a mask of shock. She raised her wine glass to her lips with a shaking hand, took a large gulp, and promptly began to cough and sputter as the wine went down the wrong way. She was choking on her wine, literally. And in that moment, watching as Michael patted her back while she struggled to regain her composure, I felt no satisfaction, no vindication, no pleasure in her discomfort. I felt free. Free from the need for her approval. Free from the hurt of her rejection. Free to be myself. To create beauty. To build a life on my own terms. "Thank you," I said to Amber, squeezing her hands. "This is just the beginning." The rest of the wedding reception passed in a blur of congratulations and business card requests. People kept coming to my table, asking about my services, praising the details they'd noticed throughout the day. Society matrons who had barely acknowledged me at previous family gatherings now wanted my contact information. Wedding photographers asked if I'd collaborate with them on future events. Even the venue coordinator pulled me aside to discuss a potential partnership. "You have a remarkable eye," she said, handing me her card. "We'd love to add you to our list of preferred planners." Throughout it all, I kept catching glimpses of my mother. She remained seated at her table, her back rigid, her social smile firmly in place whenever anyone approached her. But when she thought no one was looking, that mask slipped, revealing something I'd rarely seen on her face: uncertainty. Aunt Patricia sat beside her, leaning close to whisper something in her ear. My mother nodded stiffly, her fingers tapping against her wine glass. Across the room, Uncle Robert raised his eyebrows at me and gave a small nod of approval. The family dynamics were shifting before my eyes, fault lines appearing in what had once seemed like solid ground. After the cake cutting, Amber and James took to the dance floor for their first dance. I'd helped them choose the song, At Last, by Etta James, and arranged for the lighting to dim slightly, creating an intimate atmosphere despite the 100+ guests surrounding them. As they moved together, James whispered something that made Amber laugh, her head tipping back in genuine joy. I felt a presence beside me and turned to find Richard Bennett watching the couple with misty eyes. "You've given them something priceless," he said, not looking away from his son and new daughter-in-law. "Not just the wedding, but the memory of it. They'll tell their children about this day." "That's the goal," I said, feeling a lump form in my throat. "For the day to feel like a perfect reflection of them." Richard turned to me then. "You know, when I agreed to your plan, I thought it was mostly about proving a point to your mother. I didn't realize you were actually brilliant at this." I laughed softly. "Maybe it was a bit of both. Well, whatever the motivation, the result is spectacular." He clinked his champagne glass against mine. "To new beginnings." To new beginnings, I echoed, feeling the truth of those words settle into my bones. As the evening progressed, I found myself constantly in motion, checking with the band about the timing for the father-daughter dance, making sure the late-night snack station was set up properly, quietly directing the photographer to capture candid moments I knew Amber would treasure. This was my element, I realized. Not seeking approval or inclusion from people who couldn't see my worth, but creating experiences that brought joy to others while allowing me to express my creativity. At one point, I stepped outside onto the terrace for a moment of quiet. The autumn air was crisp but not cold, and the gardens were softly illuminated by strings of fairy lights I'd insisted on despite the additional cost. The effect was magical, like stepping into a scene from a storybook. "There you are," a voice said behind me. I turned to see Eleanor approaching, elegant in a silver pantsuit. She had been on my guest list, though I knew my mother had bristled at her inclusion. "Your father would have been so proud," she said, putting an arm around my shoulders. "Not just of what you created here, but of how you've handled yourself." I leaned into her embrace, feeling tears threaten for the first time that day. "I wish he could have seen it." "He sees it," she said softly. "And more importantly, you see it. You see what you're capable of when you step into your own power." We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the lights reflect off the glass walls of the conservatory, before she spoke again. "Your mother is asking to speak with you." My spine stiffened automatically. "I'm not sure I have anything to say to her right now." Eleanor nodded, no judgment in her expression. "That's your choice, and I'll support whatever you decide. But remember that you're speaking from a position of strength now. You're not that little girl seeking approval anymore." I considered her words carefully. Maybe it was time to have this conversation, not for my mother's sake, but for my own. For closure, if nothing else. "Where is she?" I asked. "By the koi pond," Eleanor said. "I told her I'd try to find you, but that it was entirely up to you whether to speak with her or not." I nodded, took a deep breath, and squared my shoulders. "I'll hear what she has to say." "Do you want me to come with you?" Eleanor offered. I shook my head. "No, this is something I need to do alone. But thank you." I found my mother sitting on a stone bench near the pond, watching the ornamental fish glide beneath the surface. Someone had placed paper lanterns around the water's edge, and their gentle light softened the lines of her face, making her look suddenly older, more vulnerable than I was used to seeing her. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice neutral. She looked up, startled despite having sent for me. "Emma." She gestured to the space beside her. "Will you sit?" I hesitated, then took a seat, maintaining a careful distance between us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The sounds of the reception, music, laughter, the clink of glasses, seemed far away, as if we were in our own private world. "The wedding is lovely," she finally said, her voice stiff. "You've always had an eye for detail. I remember when you were little, you used to arrange your stuffed animals by color." The memory surprised me, not the fact itself, which I remembered clearly, but that she had noticed, had remembered all these years. "Thank you," I replied simply. She folded and unfolded her hands in her lap, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the lantern light. "I didn't know you were planning to start your own business." "There's a lot you don't know about me," I said, not unkindly, but truthfully. "There's a lot you've never tried to know." Her lips thinned, and for a moment I thought she would retreat into her usual defensiveness. But instead, she sighed, a sound so uncharacteristically defeated that it caught me off guard. I haven't been the mother you deserved," she said, the words seemingly difficult for her to form. "After your father left." "This isn't about Dad," I interrupted gently. It never was. This is about you and me." She looked at me then, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. There was something different in her eyes, not the critical assessment I was used to, but something closer to recognition. At the engagement dinner, she began, then stopped, started again. What I did was unforgivable. "It wasn't unforgivable," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. "But it was revealing. You showed me exactly where I stood with you, and in doing so, you freed me. I'm not angry anymore, Mom. I'm just clear-eyed." A tear slipped down her cheek, taking some of her perfect makeup with it. She didn't wipe it away immediately, which was itself a kind of surrender for a woman who had always valued composure above all else. "Is there any way to fix this? To fix us?" she asked, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. I considered her question carefully. The easy answer would be to say yes, to offer immediate forgiveness, to smooth things over as I had done so many times before. But that wouldn't be honest, not to her, and not to myself. "I don't know," I answered truthfully. "I'm not closing that door, but I'm also not rushing through it. We would need to start with honesty, with recognition of patterns that have hurt me for years, and I would need to see consistent change, not just words or momentary remorse." She nodded slowly, finally dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. "I understand. And I need you to understand something else," I continued, finding strength in my candor. "I'm not going to put my life on hold waiting for your approval anymore. I'm building my business, creating my own path. If you want to be part of that, you'll need to accept me as I am, not as you wish I would be." "You're so much like him," she whispered. And for once, it didn't sound like an accusation. "So independent, so creative." "I am," I agreed. "And that's not a bad thing, Mom. It never was." She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the koi circling in their pond. "I've spent so many years being angry at your father for leaving that I didn't realize I was the one pushing you away." It was the most insight she'd ever shown into our relationship, and it left me momentarily speechless. Before I could formulate a response, she reached into her clutch and pulled out a small envelope. "I was going to mail this," she said, holding it out to me. "But since you're here," I took it, raising an eyebrow in question. "Open it whenever you like," she said. "It's just something I should have given you a long time ago." I slipped the envelope into my own clutch, not ready to open it in front of her, not sure what emotional landmine it might contain. "Thank you," I said simply. We sat in silence for another minute, but it was a different quality of silence than before, less charged, less adversarial. "I should get back," I finally said, standing up. "The sparkler send-off is in about an hour, and I need to make sure everything is coordinated." She stood as well, smoothing her dress with practiced hands. "Of course." We walked back toward the reception together, not touching but not at war either. A tentative truce, perhaps, or maybe just the first step toward a different kind of relationship, one based on who we really were, rather than who we wished each other to be. The rest of the evening unfolded perfectly. Amber and James departed through a tunnel of sparklers held by their loved ones, their faces illuminated by the golden light, their expressions full of joy and promise. I stood at the end of the line, making sure everyone's sparkler was properly lit, directing the photographer to capture the moment from the best angle. As the couple passed me, Amber reached out to squeeze my hand. "Thank you," she mouthed, her eyes shining. I nodded, feeling a swell of emotion that had nothing to do with my mother or our complicated history, and everything to do with the pure satisfaction of creating something beautiful, something meaningful. After the newlyweds had driven away in their decorated car, I supervised the cleanup, tipping the staff generously and making sure all the personal items were collected and properly stored. By the time I was ready to leave, most of the guests had departed. The gardens were quiet, the fairy lights still twinkling but now illuminating empty tables and chairs. As I retrieved my purse from the bridal suite, I remembered the envelope my mother had given me. I sat down on the edge of a brocade settee and opened it with careful fingers. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a handwritten note on my mother's personal stationery. Emma, I know money can never make up for the ways I've failed you, but I hope it might help you build your business. Consider it an investment in your future. No strings attached. All my love, Mom. I stared at the check, emotions warring within me. Part of me wanted to tear it up, to reject what could be seen as an attempt to buy my forgiveness or assuage her guilt. But another part recognized it for what it was, perhaps the only language of love my mother truly knew how to speak: financial support, practical assistance. She had always been more comfortable expressing care through tangible means than through emotional validation. I carefully folded the check and note and returned them to the envelope. I wasn't ready to decide what to do with it yet. That could wait for a clearer head, a day when I wasn't emotionally drained from both the culmination of months of secret work and the unexpected conversation with my mother. I drove home in silence, my mind replaying moments from the day. Amber's face when Richard revealed who had planned the wedding, my mother's unexpected vulnerability by the koi pond, the feel of the envelope in my hands. It felt like something significant had shifted, though I wasn't yet sure what shape that shift would take, or how permanent it would be. When I arrived at my apartment, I kicked off my heels with a groan of relief and poured myself a small glass of the expensive bourbon Eleanor had given me for my last birthday. I carried it to the balcony, where I could see the city lights spread out before me. It was almost midnight, but the night was still alive with energy and possibility. I took a sip of bourbon, feeling its warmth spread through my chest, and thought about the day that had just ended and the days that lay ahead. The wedding had been a triumph professionally. I had no doubt that my phone would be ringing off the hook once word spread about who was behind the mystery planner who had created such a perfect day for Amber and James. I had the seed money to really launch my business, whether I decided to accept my mother's check or not. But more importantly, I had stood in my truth. I had created something beautiful out of pain. I had shown myself, and everyone else, exactly what I was capable of. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Richard. Just dropping off the newlyweds at the hotel. Amber can't stop talking about how perfect everything was. You've made quite the impression, Ms. Hamilton. Looking forward to seeing where you go from here. I smiled, typing back a quick thank you, then set my phone aside and returned to my quiet contemplation of the night sky. Whatever came next, with my business, with my mother, with my life, I would face it from a position of strength, knowing my own worth in a way I never had before. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift I could have given myself, far more valuable than any check, any business opportunity, any external validation. It was the knowledge that I was enough, exactly as I was, whether anyone else recognized it or not. In the soft night air, with the taste of bourbon on my tongue, and the city lights sparkling before me like earthbound stars, I finally felt at peace. The months following Amber and James's wedding were a whirlwind of activity. As I'd anticipated, Richard's public announcement of my role in planning the event led to an influx of inquiries. What I hadn't expected was the scale of it. Within 2 weeks, I had booking requests that would have filled my calendar for the next year if I'd accepted them all. I made the decision to be selective, focusing on clients whose visions aligned with my aesthetic and who valued the personal touch I brought to the planning process. I also decided, after much consideration, to cash my mother's check, not because I needed the money, but because rejecting it would have been another form of allowing her actions to dictate my choices. I used it to lease a small office space in an up-and-coming area of the city, to hire an assistant, and to create a website that showcased my design philosophy. The name I chose for my business, Forever Moments, felt right on multiple levels. It spoke to the lasting memories I wanted to create for my clients, but it also acknowledged the power of singular moments to change the course of a life. That dinner table rejection had been such a moment for me, painful as it was at the time. It had pushed me to create something that was truly my own. My relationship with my mother remained a work in progress. We began with small steps, occasional phone calls, brief text messages about neutral topics. She sent flowers when my office officially opened, the card simply signed, "Proud of you. Love, Mom." I invited her to a casual lunch the following week, and to my surprise, she accepted. We met at a small cafe not far from my new office. I arrived a few minutes early and watched through the window as she approached, noting the careful way she checked her appearance in the reflection of a store window before entering. Some habits were deeply ingrained. "Emma," she said, taking the seat across from me. "Thank you for inviting me." "Thank you for coming," I replied, pushing a menu toward her. "They have great salads here." The conversation was stilted at first, both of us careful to avoid topics that might reignite old tensions. She asked about my business, and I told her about the clients I'd signed since the wedding. She mentioned a charity gala she was helping to organize, and I offered a few suggestions for centerpieces that wouldn't block sightlines across the tables. It wasn't until our food arrived that she broached a more personal subject. "I've been seeing someone," she said, arranging her napkin in her lap with precise movements. "A therapist, I mean." I paused with my fork halfway to my mouth, surprised not so much by the fact itself as by her willingness to share it. My mother had always dismissed therapy as something for weak-minded people who can't solve their own problems. That's great, Mom. It's helping, I think," she continued, not quite meeting my eyes. "She's helping me understand some patterns I wasn't aware of. How I've been projecting my feelings about your father onto you." I set down my fork, giving her my full attention. "I appreciate you telling me that." She nodded, finally looking up. "I'm not saying this to ask for anything from you, Emma. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying to do better. To be better." "Thank you," I said simply. The lunch wasn't a magical healing of all our past hurts. There were still awkward pauses, still moments when I could see her fighting the urge to criticize or control. But it was a beginning, a small step toward a different kind of relationship. As fall turned to winter, my business continued to flourish. I hired a second assistant and began to establish relationships with the best vendors in the city. Florists who could translate my vision into reality, caterers who prioritized quality over cutting corners, photographers who understood how to capture genuine moments rather than just posed shots. Eleanor became a regular visitor to my office, often bringing coffee and pastries, offering advice when asked, but mostly just providing the unconditional support she had always given me. We established a weekly dinner tradition, usually at her apartment, where she would cook elaborate meals while I told her about my latest projects. "Have you given any thought to expanding?" she asked one evening as we shared a bottle of wine after dinner. "You're turning away more clients than you're accepting these days." "I've thought about it," I admitted, "but I'm worried about losing the personal touch if I grow too quickly." "There are ways to expand mindfully," she pointed out. "You could train other planners in your approach, establish a set of guiding principles for the business." "Maybe," I said, swirling the wine in my glass. I've worked for companies that prioritized quantity over quality. I don't want to become that." "You won't," she said with certainty. "It's not in your nature." Our conversation was interrupted by my phone ringing. I glanced at the screen, surprised to see my brother's name. "It's Michael," I said, showing her the screen. "Do you mind if I—" "Of course not," Eleanor said, standing to clear the dishes. "Take your time." I answered the call, curious about why he would be calling at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. Michael and I had maintained our relationship after the engagement dinner incident, though there had been a period of awkwardness when he'd struggled to navigate the tension between me and our mother. He'd called to congratulate me after the wedding reveal, but our conversation since then had been mostly surface level. "Michael? Everything okay?" "Hey, he said, his voice unusually animated. "Everything's great, actually. That's why I'm calling. Sophia's pregnant." "Michael, that's wonderful news," I exclaimed, genuinely happy for them. Sophia had mentioned at a family dinner months ago that they were trying to start a family. "Thanks," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "We're really excited. It's early days, just 8 weeks, but the doctor says everything looks good so far." "I'm so happy for you both," I said. "When are you due?" "Mid-June," he replied, "just in time for summer." We talked for a few more minutes about how Sophia was feeling, tired but not too nauseous, and how he was handling the news, alternating between excitement and terror. As the conversation wound down, he paused, then added, "I've told Mom already. She's over the moon, of course." "I bet," I said, keeping my tone light. My mother had been not so subtly hinting about grandchildren for years, especially to Michael and Sophia. "She mentioned that you two have been talking more," he said, a question in his voice. "We have," I confirmed. "We're working on things." "That's good," he said, sounding relieved. "Listen, Sophia wants to do a small dinner in a couple of weeks to celebrate the pregnancy. Nothing fancy, just family. We'd really like you to be there." "Of course I'll be there," I said immediately. After we hung up, I rejoined Eleanor in the kitchen, filling her in on Michael's news as I helped her load the dishwasher. "That's lovely," she said. "You'll be an aunt. How do you feel about that?" "Happy," I said, realizing as I spoke that it was entirely true. "Really happy for them." "And the family dinner? How do you feel about that?" she probed gently. I considered her question. Cautiously optimistic, I decided. It will be the first time we've all been together in a smaller setting since everything happened. "You've come a long way," Eleanor observed. 6 months ago, the prospect would have filled you with dread." She was right, I realized. Something had shifted in me, a wound that had begun to heal. Not because it had been magically erased, but because I had learned to tend to it with honesty and self-compassion. The dinner at Michael and Sophia's was indeed a small affair. Just them, our mother, me, and Sophia's parents, who had driven in from their home 2 hours away. Michael grilled steaks on their patio, while Sophia and I prepared sides in the kitchen, falling into an easy rhythm of chopping, stirring, and chatting about nothing in particular. "I've been following your business on Instagram," Sophia said, as she sliced tomatoes for a salad. "That wedding you did last month, the one at the Botanical Gardens with all the hanging lanterns? Stunning." "Thanks," I said, pleased by her interest. "That was a fun one. The couple had a specific vision but gave me a lot of creative freedom within it." "I've been thinking," she said, setting down her knife. "After the baby comes, Michael and I want to renew our vows. Nothing elaborate, just a small ceremony to mark this new chapter. Would you consider helping us plan it?" I was touched by her request. "I'd be honored," I said. "Though you should know, I don't give family discounts." I kept my tone light, making it clear I was joking. Sophia laughed. "I wouldn't expect one. Your work speaks for itself." When we all gathered around the table, I found myself seated directly across from my mother. She was wearing a simple blue dress I didn't recognize, less formal than her usual attire, and had styled her hair in a softer way that made her look somehow more approachable. As wine was poured, sparkling water for Sophia, and food was passed, I watched the dynamics around the table with an observer's eye. My mother was making a genuine effort to engage with Sophia's parents, asking thoughtful questions about their hometown, and listening attentively to the answers. Michael seemed more relaxed than I'd seen him in years, one hand often resting protectively near Sophia's on the table. And Sophia herself was glowing with happiness, her excitement about the pregnancy evident in every gesture. After dinner, as we lingered over coffee and the apple crumble Sophia's mother had brought, Michael cleared his throat. "We have one more piece of news," he said, smiling at Sophia. "We found out today that we're having a girl." Exclamations of delight circled the table. My mother's eyes filled with tears, a display of emotion she would have carefully controlled in the past. "A granddaughter," she said softly. "How wonderful." "We've been talking about names," Sophia continued, "and we really like the name Eleanor." I felt a rush of emotion, thinking of my godmother who had been such a constant source of support in my life. "That's a beautiful name," I said. "We thought so," Michael agreed. "It has special meaning for both of us." He looked directly at me as he said this, and I understood the gesture for what it was, an acknowledgement of Eleanor's importance, not just to me but to our shared family story. As the evening wound down, I found myself on the patio with my mother, both of us wrapped in light sweaters against the evening chill. Inside, Michael and Sophia were saying goodbye to her parents. "They seem happy," my mother observed, watching through the window as Michael helped Sophia's father with his coat. "They are," I agreed. "They're good together." She nodded, then turned to face me directly. "I've been thinking about what you said at the wedding, about needing to see consistent change, not just words." "I remember," I said cautiously. "I want you to know that I'm trying," she said. "I know I still slip sometimes, fall back into old patterns, but I'm aware of it now at least." "I've noticed," I said, and was rewarded with a look of cautious hope on her face. "I appreciate the effort, Mom. Really." She reached out hesitantly and touched my arm. A small gesture, but meaningful from a woman who had rarely demonstrated physical affection. "I'm proud of what you're building, Emma. Your business, yes, but also your life. The way you've made your own path." The words washed over me like a warm wave, unexpected but welcome. I didn't need her approval anymore, had built a life that was fulfilling without it. But I couldn't deny that hearing her express genuine pride felt like the closure of a circle that had been open for too long. "Thank you," I said simply. In the months that followed, my business continued to grow. I took Eleanor's advice and began training other planners, carefully selecting individuals who shared my aesthetic sensibilities and attention to detail. By the time spring arrived, Forever Moments had a team of 4 full-time employees and a reputation as one of the premier wedding planning agencies in the city. My relationship with my mother continued its slow healing process. There were still difficult moments, still times when old patterns threatened to resurface. But there was also a new foundation of honesty between us, a willingness to acknowledge hurts rather than sweep them under the rug, to apologize when necessary, to try again when we faltered. In April, I received an unexpected invitation. My mother was hosting a baby shower for Sophia at her home, and she had written a personal note at the bottom of the formal invitation. "Emma, I would love your help with the planning. Your professional expertise would be invaluable, but more importantly, your presence would make the day complete. Love, Mom." I read the note several times, feeling the weight of what wasn't said as much as what was. This wasn't just an invitation to an event. It was an invitation back into the center of family life, an acknowledgement that I belonged there, not as a guest, but as an essential part. I called my mother that evening and accepted both the invitation to attend and the request to help plan. Over the next few weeks, we worked together to create a beautiful spring-themed shower. There were moments of tension, times when our different approaches to event planning clashed. But there were also moments of unexpected harmony, of shared vision, of genuine collaboration. The day of the shower dawned clear and perfect. I arrived at my mother's house early to oversee the final setup, arranging the flower centerpieces I had designed, checking the placement of the dessert table, making sure the gift display was properly positioned. My mother found me in the dining room, adjusting the height of a candle holder on the buffet. "It's perfect, Emma," she said, her voice warm. "Everything is perfect." I turned to look at her. This woman who had been the source of so much pain and longing in my life. She was older now, lines at the corners of her eyes and mouth that hadn't been there a year ago. But there was something different about her expression, something softer and more genuine. "I'm glad you like it," I said. "Not just the shower," she clarified. "Everything you've done, the business you've built, the woman you've become." She hesitated, then added, "I just want you to know that I see you now, Emma. I really see you." Those words, "I see you," were perhaps the most healing she could have offered. They acknowledged the core of what had been missing between us for so long. True recognition of who I was, not who she had wanted me to be. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "That means a lot to me." The shower itself was a lovely afternoon of celebration and connection. Sophia was radiant, surrounded by friends and family who were genuinely excited about the impending arrival of baby Eleanor. My mother played the perfect hostess, attentive and warm without being overbearing. And I found myself able to fully enjoy the event, free from the old anxiety about where I fit in this family constellation. As guests began to depart, Sophia pulled me aside, her hands resting on her rounded belly. "Thank you for all of this," she said, gesturing to the beautifully decorated space. "It's exactly what I would have wanted." "I'm glad," I said. Though it was a team effort, Mom had some great ideas. Sophia's expression softened. "It's been nice, seeing you two find your way back to each other. Michael's noticed it too." "We're working on it," I acknowledged, one day at a time. After the last guest had left, I helped my mother with the initial cleanup, boxing leftover cake for Sophia to take home, gathering gift wrap for recycling, reorganizing furniture that had been moved to accommodate the celebration. "You don't have to do all this," my mother said, as I wiped down the buffet table. "I can handle it." "I know," I said, "but I don't mind." We worked in companionable silence for a while, the afternoon sun slanting through the windows, casting long shadows across the polished floors. It struck me suddenly how different this felt from all the family gatherings of my childhood and young adulthood, when I had been constantly tense, constantly vigilant, constantly seeking approval that never seemed to come. "Mom," I said, pausing in my work, "do you remember what you said to me at the engagement dinner? About the table being for immediate family only?" She went still, a stack of dessert plates in her hands. "Yes," she said quietly. "I remember. I want you to know that I forgive you," I said, the words rising from a place of genuine healing rather than obligation. Not because what happened doesn't matter, but because holding on to it doesn't serve either of us anymore. She set the plates down carefully, her hands trembling slightly. "I don't know if I deserve your forgiveness," she admitted, "but I'm grateful for it." "It's not about deserving," I said. "It's about choosing to move forward." She nodded, blinking rapidly. "I'm trying to do that too, to move forward, to be better." "I know," I said. "I see that." And I did see it. In the way she had supported my business, in the way she had sought help for patterns she hadn't previously recognized, in the way she was attempting to be a different kind of mother-in-law to Sophia than she had been to me, in the way she was preparing to be a grandmother who didn't repeat the mistakes of her past. Later that evening, as I drove home under a sky streaked with the pinks and oranges of sunset, I thought about the journey of the past year. From being excluded at a table for immediate family only, to helping host a celebration of new life and new beginnings. From walking away with my dignity intact, to returning with my sense of self firmly established. The road hadn't been straight or easy. There had been setbacks and difficult conversations, moments when old wounds reopened, when patterns threatened to reassert themselves. But there had also been growth, on both sides. There had been effort and honesty, and the slow rebuilding of trust. When I reached my apartment, I found a small package waiting for me. It was wrapped in simple white paper with a silver ribbon, my mother's signature style. I opened it to find a delicate silver frame containing a photograph I'd never seen before. My father holding me as a baby, his expression one of pure adoration. On the back, in my mother's precise handwriting, was a note. For too long, I tried to erase parts of your father from our lives, but in doing so, I was erasing parts of you. I'm sorry for that. I found this photo recently and thought you should have it. You were loved from the very beginning. Never doubt that. I traced my fingers over the image, over the face of the father I had lost too young, over the tiny bundle that was me in his arms. Tears filled my eyes, but they weren't tears of grief or anger. They were tears of release, of letting go of the narrative I had carried for so long about not being enough, not being loved enough. That night, I placed the photo on my bedside table, the last thing I would see before sleep, and the first thing upon waking, a reminder not just of the father I had lost, but of the journey I had taken to find myself, and, unexpectedly, to find a new kind of relationship with my mother. This table's for immediate family only, she had said. And I had left, but not without a response. Not without standing up for myself in my own quiet way. Not without creating something beautiful from the hurt. And that had made all the difference.